and welcome to VOP Business Show. I'm Esther Wachuku. The price of fuel in petrol stations will rise from 500 naira per litre to as high as 700 naira per litre, and that is according to the National Controller Operations of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, Mike Osatuyi. According to Osatuyi, the price of fuel will depend on the exchange rate, the current crude price at the international market, and the landing cost. Also, the Executive Secretary, Depot and Petroleum Products Marketers Association of Nigeria, Olufemi Adewale, said market fundamentals will determine the price Nigerians will buy petrol at retail stations, stating further that the value-added tax added to refined crude products will also influence the cost at the pump. Now, let's welcome Mr. Toluwase Olaniyan, who is an economic analyst. Mr. Toluwase, good afternoon and welcome to the VOP Business Show.
Good afternoon and thank you for having me.
All right, thank you too for joining us. Now, Mr. Olaniyan, it's quite, I would say, it's not an information that a lot of Nigerians are happy to hear. Already, I think the idea is to deregulate the downstream sector, whereby prices will be determined based on what is bought at the international market, based on demand, and of course, based on supply. But at the moment, Nigerians are choked with the high pump price to 500 naira per litre. If there is an increment to 700 naira per litre, we know we do have in some filling stations where they sell at 600, 700. In fact, I also heard that in some areas, in some regions, it's being sold at 1,000 or 800 naira per litre. If it increases to 700 naira per litre, how do you think it's going to affect the economy from now on?
Thank you. And this is quite a tough one. We live in a critical time in Nigeria at this time. But unfortunately for us, we should have done this a while ago, right? We should have done this a long time ago. Having to do it now, it most likely won't get any better. Now, it would hit the poor masses really hard in terms of how this economy now begins to unfold and how a few things begin to happen. But like we have seen in other countries, over time, things will stable, right? Things will get stabilized and we'll begin to see the dividend. Again, if the government of the day is bold enough to say that we want to take off the subsidy and then allow all marketers have said, allow the market dictate what the figures will be, it means that the government is also set to be able to design models to cushion the effect of this. But yes, I would agree with everybody on the street that this will hit everyone really hard. It will hit the masses real hard, and it will hit the nation real hard.
All right, let's look at the fundamentals. Now, according to Osatuyi, he said that the price of fuel will depend on the exchange rate, which is forex. It also will depend on the current crude price at the international market and the landing cost. So these are three factors that are strong influences to the increment of petrol. Now, the situation is this. We do know that deregulation is not a bad thing. Like you rightly said, it's something that ought to have happened a long while ago. But if these three factors are the major, the major influencers of how the price of petrol will be sold from now on, what are the palliative measures? You do recall that there have been no palliative measures ever since the federal government disclosed that there will no longer be subsidy on petrol. Secondly, during the president's address on Democracy Day, he stipulated that palliative measures on transportation, as well as agriculture and education as well, these were areas that he mentioned would be the palliative measures to cushion, the shock effect of subsidy removal. We've not seen that take place. And already, the consumption of petrol since the increment has actually reduced, based on a report that was given last month, that the consumption of petrol by consumers, that is the purchasing power, has actually dropped, because now it's now become very costly. So people have actually looked for alternative means for energy. The question now I'm asking you is, if these factors are very important to look at, what are the palliative measures if this eventually comes to play?
Okay, so the honest truth is I mean, I try not to speak for the government, but we are beginning to hear. I mean, so the government has itemized and analyzed the areas where the palliatives will come through, right? So this is what we now need to do in the days ahead to hold the government of the day accountable to this. Because I mean, again, if they have not said, I mean, so the most that we can do is to begin to hope and not be in a haste to recommend like the best ways for them to design the palliatives. However, over time, right, as Oshatui has rightly said in his address, it means that if there is a downward slope, or if Naira measures strong against dollar, it means that the pump price might actually come down. Okay. So it's also not said that this is a permanent price or this is a permanent figure. I know that a lot of people would say nothing goes up in Nigeria and never comes down. I know, right? But if this is, I mean, if the coin analysis is, it means that as the Naira begins to get stronger over time, the dollar would also, I mean, come close. It means that the pump price would begin to come down significantly. It means we'll also be able to afford a few more things, and it means that life will become a lot better for a lot of people, right? So let's see what the days ahead looks like, and let's see what the government is putting up in terms of palliative. But however, I would encourage and I would charge all Nigerians to begin to hold the government accountable to this palliative, which is why this is very interesting that we're having this conversation at this time. Now, we begin to hold the government accountable to the areas that they've said that they will provide palliative, right? Transportation. We know that Nigerians are heavily dependent on public transportation, right? And our buses, our means of transportation are heavily dependent on fuel, right? So you see queues at the bus stops. I mean, it's hitting a lot of people hard. I know Lagos State is working on a few things or a few models to be able to ease tension. In fact, Lagos is one of the most hit cities, right? I know Lagos State is working on a few modalities and a few palliative measures for its citizens, but we need to be able to hold the federal government accountable for this and across the board, particularly agriculture, right? So we don't experience high hunger rates in the days ahead, right? I mean, so in terms of statistics, I mean, the hunger rate in Nigeria seems to be, I mean, average. So we need to be careful not to make this hit the roof, and that's what the government had said. We would make provision for all of this, particularly agriculture. See, access to markets for farmers is extremely important, and access to markets is heavily dependent on petrol, on crude in Nigeria. So we need to, I mean, largely hold the government accountable by this. But I know that for the government to have said this, it means that there is a roadmap. Again, maybe we need to start hold them and say, please, in milestones, analyze and let us expose us to your plans, so we know. Because I mean, the data, I mean, I'm not looking funny at all.
All right, so Mr. Oladiyo, let's still stay on the tripod of the exchange rate, the current crude price, and the landing costs. These factors are actually important when we look at where IPMAN is coming from. You've also mentioned the fact of accountability to the government if we want to look at, you know, the actuality of the palliative measures that will be implemented. Let's look at inflation. It's actually on the rise at the moment. Some economic analysts would actually say that inflation is the world over ever since we went through COVID. But it's peculiar in this part of the world because it's something that we could have been able to manage if we had strategically placed our economy in the right direction. So we are coming out of an economy where we had a lot of impediment under the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. At some point, the exchange rate was so inconsistent, it affected market realities at the time. And the stock also was not encouraging if you were able to read at the stock rhythm. At this point in time, with the current reality on ground, what is the first sector the government should hit up with immediately? So if at all, fuel is increased to 700 naira per liter, Nigerians can cope. Remember, the idea is to let the poor breathe, but I don't know if that is the scenario at play at the moment?
Okay, okay. I mean, let the poor breathe. Don't suffocate them, right? I mean, please don't, right? And like the government has rightly said by itself, agriculture is that one key area that should be focused on. Not just agriculture, not only in terms of planting, but in terms of access to the market and in terms of what gets to the table of the common man, right? The cost of food items are becoming extremely expensive, right? And you see the most hits in all of this are the people at the bottom of the pyramid, right? We need to make adequate plan for those people at the bottom of the pyramid. So agriculture is one way that the government should look out for. And we have not seen a lot of government intervention, government fully playing in the agricultural space in Nigeria. Oh yes, maybe a little, but not as much as we've seen in oil and gas and a few other industries. I mean, you hear that there's this regulation around in the finance industry. There's this regulation in oil and gas, but we've not seen a lot in agriculture, right? So which has left that space a free for all playground. But the government needs to do a lot of intervention in that place so that the food that gets to the table of the is, I mean, feels the impact of the government. And that way, I mean, so every household spend a certain percentage, in fact, a large chunk of their earnings on food consumption, right? If that percentage is being driven down by government subsidy, it means that okay, the remaining, I mean, so the purchasing power for other products would increase since we now pay a lot lesser on food items, right? So agriculture is one industry that needs to be looked into largely, and we need a lot of regulation and regulation in that space, and not just leave it a free for all market for all players in that space.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Olanio, for your contribution right here on the VOP Business Show. I do appreciate your input.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Now, the Bank of America has said the Monetary Policy Committee of the central bank may need to increase interest rates by at least 700 basis points before the end of the year to curb inflation. Now, in a recent interview with Bloomberg, the bank's sub-Saharan Africa economist Tatonga Rusike said the hike was necessary to tackle soaring inflation occasioned by the fuel subsidy removal and unification of foreign exchange. Rusike explained that at the current trend, inflation may quicken to 30% by the end of the year from 22.4% in May, noting that the nation's apex bank may need to push up the rates. He further warned that if this decision was not taken, foreign investors might exercise caution before investing in the country. Now, the VOP Business Desk reports that the CBN, in record-breaking moves, has been increasing the country's interest rates since last year. The raise has, however, not slowed Nigeria's soaring inflation, which hit 22.41% in May 2023, compared with 22.22% in April 2023. Meanwhile, the Nigerian government, through the Federal Inland Revenue Service, has announced the VAT Directive Initiative, a scheme aimed towards enabling the government to collect value-added taxes from the informal sector and reduce multiple taxations in the informal economy. The FIRS disclosed this in a statement yesterday. It stated that it would partner with the Market Traders Association of Nigeria, MATAN, to collect and remit VAT from its members, particularly those in the informal sector, using a unified systems technology. According to the FIRS, the scheme will help tackle multiple taxations in the marketplace through partnerships with security agencies to curb the activities of louts and self-imposed tax collectors. MATAN members will each receive an ID card upon enumeration, which would contain their tax identification number and other personal details. Also, the move is coming at a time Nigerians are groaning, under the burden of fuel subsidy removal and foreign exchange reforms. There are indications some informal sector groups may protest the new tax being imposed by the FIRS. The board of directors of the African Development Bank Group has approved $150 million loan to support a major road rehabilitation project in Abia State. The project would ensure the rehabilitation of roads, erosion control, infrastructure, and preparation of solid waste management facilities in the state capital, Umuahia, and the commercial hub, Aba. In a statement, the Director General of the African Development Bank's Nigeria Country Department, Lamin Barrow, said the project would build resilience by providing the town access to urban infrastructure services, which includes economic and social amenities. The statement said the financing for the project, estimated at a total cost of $263.8 million, would come through an African Development Bank loan of $100 million. A Canada African Development Bank Climate Fund loan of $50 million and a $125 million co-financing loan from the Islamic Development Bank. The Abia State government would provide $23.8 million in counterpart funding for compensation to people affected by the project and implementation of a resettlement action plan. Now, the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited has announced plans to install charging ports across its filling stations nationwide to charge electric vehicles as part of moves to reduce carbon emission. It also said the company would be investing in electric vehicles to meet local demand, as the NNPCL was currently discussing with an indigenous firm involved in this. The managing director, NNPC New Energy Limited, Kanayo Chukwu Odo, disclosed this in NNPCL's latest quarterly publication released yesterday and obtained in Abuja. NNPC's New Energy Limited is a subsidiary of NNPCL involved in the development and advancement of renewables by the National Oil Company. Mr. Odo also stated that the company was currently working on a biodiesel plant in Cross River State. And that's all we have for you right here on the VOP Business Show. We would like you to subscribe, engage us on YouTube. It is at Voice of the People TV and across our social media handles at VOP TV Live. My name is Esther Wachuku. Bye for now.